to
If we started it all over today, we would put the human at the center from the very start. We would build technology that understood humans and didn't force humans to understand technology. So when you design security with people right at the center, you treat people like the unique individuals that they actually are. And we can see our friends. And if they're acting weird or they're behaving anomalously, we ask them, is something wrong? We don't necessarily assume that they're doing something terrible or evil, but we know that they're doing something different. And if we were designing cybersecurity today, we would build systems where we knew when people were doing something different so that we could find out, is something wrong, or are you trying to hurt me? What else would it do?
okay, amazing. So let me make you presenter, and in a second. Yep, so now, David, you're a presenter. You have your ability to share your screen, and please go ahead. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I just get a check? Can you guys see the first slide?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Daniel. And it's wonderful to be here again at Filter Max. Both Miroslav and I were here in, well, we're in Hungary this time last year. And it's been a very short year. It's just a shame that we're not able to be there together. But maybe next year. Maybe next year. So we are a very close partner with FilterMax. For many years, we've worked very closely together. My name is Dave. I'm calling you now from London, a lovely sunny London also, I must say. I'm responsible for our portfolio for our edge protection solutions. Also joining with Miroslav. And Miroslav, I'm not even going to try to say your surname.
Yeah, Englishman has a problem with that. Typically, my ex-boss was trying like 3 years, never got it right. But it's Bajgar.
Bajgar, okay.
Yeah.
So you're responsible for Hungary and Slovakia. Is that correct?
That's correct, and including to it is also a Czech Republic, where I am from. So it's my home country. So I'm now sitting in my small town, also at home, looking for my part.
Well, I think working from home actually is a very good example of security, really, because we used to protect our networks, and we used to work in buildings, and we used to put all of our protection around those buildings. But now we work from home, but we want to collaborate and work with other people as well as we can. So the perimeter of the network is the person now. If we want to go onto the network, we go to the road. But really, the perimeter is us. It's me, Dave, Miroslav, Daniel, and you. And that's why people are so important to Forcepoint. Everything we do is focused on protecting people, because if we can protect people and the data that they work with, we can improve the efficiency of a business. You can use more cloud, like my T-shirt says. You can use more cloud, for example. So Forcepoint, I'm only going to spend 2 minutes on Forcepoint. Forcepoint is the technology, the security, information security part of Raytheon, which is a $100 billion US corporation. Raytheon have two kinds of information security. They have attack information security. This is only available to US government, etc. And they have defense information security. And the defensive information security is what Forcepoint make. So Forcepoint is a combination of many acquisitions. So Raytheon had two technologies, DataGuard and Forcepoint Insider Threat. We acquired WebSense, and you probably know WebSense for web security, Triton, and also a Gartner Magic Quadrant DLP solution. We bought StoneSoft, which made a next generation firewalls and SD-WAN technology. Skyfence was the CASB technology that we bought. We bought Skyfence because it was very focused on human behavior. And also we bought Red Owl. So I've worked for 24 years in information security. I know I look like I'm 30 years old, but actually a bit longer. And I have seen many companies buy companies and then no benefit to the customer. Forcepoint's focus has been on integrating our technologies together. So today, we're focusing on cloud first. We know that our customers do not want to put more technology on premise. However, on-premise technology will exist for a long time. So we're making it possible to use cloud native technologies, but not have to throw away on-premise. A good example of on-premise is DLP, which we're going to talk about today. The second thing we are doing is we are converging our technology. Now, integrating technology is very good. We're putting one product next to another product and then making them work together. What we are doing is we are converging them. We are building one product that does many things. Anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. We have many customers and we're a very big company and we have an amazing partner network, especially with FilterMax, Daniel and his colleagues. So I talked about converging our technologies. So if you think about all of our technologies, first of all, we are building a single platform, a single SASE platform, Secure Access Service Edge platform, which is native to the cloud. It's completely and utterly native. So we're putting parts of our products into this converged platform for edge protection. So edge protection technologies, things like CASB for protection against cloud, email, web security, security over SD-WAN. This is dynamic edge protection. And then we're focusing on data with dynamic data protection. So we're focusing on the data lifecycle protection, DLP, and user behavior analytics. And then we're focusing on the way that the users are behaving in the company. We also have an open platform for other components. For example, remote browser isolation, which we are launching very soon. This will be accessed via edge devices, and it will have an open ecosystem of endpoints and API for other third parties. This is what we're building. So I wanted to share this with you because it shows you our development process, our development direction. We are not just trying to sell you separate products. We know that you need solutions that are converged together. So that's enough marketing for one day. What is the problem we're trying to solve here with data? Well, in a perfect world, we don't have to make data outside of the business. Data can just stay inside the business. But to be efficient in a business, you need to collaborate and you need to work with third parties. You need to have employees traveling. You need to use cloud applications. But those cloud applications, you know, they can open new risks, and those employees can lose laptops, and those employees sometimes become attacked, and their identity could be used to steal data. Or maybe sometimes those employees can become malicious, they can become bad. So really the three areas of the problem, we don't know what problem will be what problem you will have next, but these are the three areas of problem that you might have. So number one is somebody outside of your business can attack you. and they can steal your credit card data, your customer data, healthcare data. Health data is the most expensive, actually, because you cannot change who you are. Anyway, so we look at things like, for example, Equifax. Equifax was the single most terrible data breach ever. Hundreds of millions of customers had their credit records stolen, not just their credit card, their credit record. It's terrible. And, you know, Equifax CEO resigned, and a lot of things happened in the news, you can see. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes people try to do good things, but they make mistakes. I'm going to give you an example actually at Forcepoint. Last week, we had one person working from home. Well, our whole company is working from home. One person wanted to print a document working for Forcepoint, and they were not able to print the document because the printer is in the office and they are at home. So what one person did was he sent a file to his personal email so that he could print it on his local printer. We caught it. We stopped it. We stopped this potential data breach. So people trying to do the right thing, but actually sometimes they break the rules. Accidental insiders. It's very common, for example, in a bank, for people to take data home so that they can work at home. We had one bank in Africa where we saw that a lot of credit card information was sent to a Gmail account from one employee. And we asked her, and she said, well, I'm using my bank laptop. I'm entering my username and password into the laptop. And so everything after that is okay to use. So I needed to send this work to my home so I can work at the weekend. She thought because she was using a work laptop, everything she did was okay. Unfortunately not. And then sometimes people inside a business go bad. And we can see with McAfee where their source code for the antivirus was stolen, and with Tesla, of course, where they had an unhappy employee. People can steal data. So this is the threat. But I never really understood why most people who use DLP never actually block data being stolen or being lost. And it's because they're not certain that it's not a false positive. So everything we focused on doing here at Forcepoint is lowering the chance of false positive by using human behavior as a context. Okay. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about the new risks that the cloud opens, and because digital transformation really in the last 2 months, we've seen incredible amount more cloud use and more remote working use. We've seen maybe 2 to 3 years of digital transformation in 2 months. So what risks are there in the cloud around data? We're going to talk about how we can do this technically. We're going to talk about what's new with our data lifecycle protection product. And then finally, Miroslav will do a demo. And then finally, we're going to talk about CASB and what's new in CASB. So the 5 main risk problems that using the cloud opens, 2 of them are relating to data. Number 1, users want to share data. So for example, you could buy Office 365 E3 and you would have OneDrive. And you can allow people with OneDrive or Teams or Yammer to share data outside of your organization. But you need to understand if they're sharing it with people that should not receive it, or if they're sharing data that should never be shared, if it's credit card data or personal data or confidential data. The second area that is concerning data is shadow IT. It might be possible that if you do not provide a solution for your users to collaborate or to work, then they will find their own. If you do not allow them to share outside with OneDrive, maybe they'll use Box or Dropbox. Another kind of shadow IT, it might be when your employees have to work with another company, and the other company wants to use their collaboration tool. So maybe you do not support Google Drive, but the law firm that you're working with wants to use Google Docs. What do? You cannot say no. If you say no, then they will just find another way. So you have to manage this risk, and this is an area we can help. Of course, devices, yeah? People like to use their own devices. They want to use consumer device. They want to use WhatsApp and WeTransfer and Google Maps and iOS and Android. This is a problem, because really, if you allow people to access, for example, Office 365 with multi-factor authentication, you cannot stop people from accessing from their own device or their mother's device or a competitor's device if the credentials are stolen. The third area is administrators making mistakes. Very common for, especially with IaaS and PaaS, AWS and Azure, for the admin credentials being stolen by an attacker who then can have a lot of make a lot of damage. Talking about damage, there's an old story when they said why they asked a bank robber why he robs banks, and he said because that's where the money is. Well, exactly true. The money is in the bank, and the data now is stored outside of the business. Typically, 52% of data in an organization that has deployed Office 365, 52% of the data is now outside of the business. People don't store data on premise much anymore. Most new data is generated and stored in the cloud. So that's where the attackers will go. So we need to protect those cloud applications. Now, some cloud applications provide protection, but not all. I will give you an example. We have a customer who's a newspaper in EMEA, and they called me. They had deployed our CASB technology to protect their Office 365. They're not a very technically advanced customer, but they called me and he said, well, Office 365 says nothing, but your CASB has gone crazy for one journalist. What is it? What could happen? So I looked at the log files and we found five things that showed there was an attack in real time on one of their journalists' Office 365 accounts. So number one, we look at the device that the journalist was using. It looks like it's Android. Normally the journalists use iOS. So that's a little bit more risk. We then look at the location. Because we're monitoring the location, it was not a usual location. We found that the access to Office 365 from Android device was from the Ukraine. The journalist never traveled to the Ukraine. We then looked at an attack. It was a username password failure 4 times from an IP address in the Ukraine on an Android device. It was a brute force attack. That was number 3. It's looking serious now. The 5th attempt to use username and password was correct. It was a successful brute force attack. We then looked at one last thing, is the IP address reputation was from a known Russian national hacking group based in the Ukraine. It was an active attack on an Office 365 account against the information stored in a journalist's account. Now, if you do not look for these things, you cannot protect them, but we found it in real time. This is the value of CASB. Whichever cloud application you use, we can protect you in real time against attack. Okay, so what can we do? Well, the problem of users sharing too much data, what we can do is we can look at what is a normal behavior. So a group of people inside a building outside a building with legitimate credentials, what we can do is we can exclude Gmail accounts, exclude Yahoo accounts, exclude anything apart from your business, or whitelisted trusted parties like lawyers and partners. We can look at behavior of location. We can say, why are you sharing data if you're in Hungary with people in Tokyo? We don't have any people in Tokyo. So we can look at this and clean it up. So we can use this to help you collaborate safely within a cloud application, so that you can offer your users the ability to collaborate with data in the cloud. The second problem we have was personal device uses. Well, what we can do is we can use for people who are trusted on trusted devices that you're providing, we give them a forward proxy control. For people who are using personal devices, we can use access control around reverse proxy. So we can put a reverse proxy somewhere close geographically, nice and quick, so that if you try to access, for example, FilterMax Office 365, we read using SSO to redirect you to filtermax.office365.com, which is managed by Forcepoint, so that we can device check and then give appropriate levels of control on your unmanaged devices. I just moved the animation. So the problem about administrators becoming under risk, we can use advanced behavioral analytics to understand what do users do, what do administrators do, excuse me. Do administrators normally delete 10 firewalls in Azure in 1 minute? No. So block that user, or give them two-factor authentication requests to prove who they are on SMS or email. Or better still, send an SMS email to the security team to say we think that there's a problem. We can automatically enforce that policy. So we can automatically block people from accessing your AWS from outside of your business, for example, in a third party. And we can also assess the compliance of that cloud application against common standards like PCI or ISO, etc. What can we do about your users becoming under attack? Well, firstly, we can watch what they're doing normally, and then we can start to build a behavioral profile of what they're doing. And if they start to do things that together are risky, we can then either ask them to prove who they are with authentication, SMS, email, etc., or we can block them. So we can look at the user and the way that the user is behaving. And then finally, with shadow IT. So really, we can get visibility into what people are doing, and then you can decide with Forcepoint CASB and CASB DLP, you can decide what you want to do. With usual web security, you can allow or you can block access. With DLP Cloud Apps and CASB, you can give people permission to use cloud applications that they have decided to use, because you are looking at the data and you're looking at their behavior. It allows you to have control over cloud applications you are not the administrator for. It helps you to say yes to your business. Okay, so we're going to talk about the deployment options, how we can deploy these protections. And what I'm talking about in these products is CASB, which is giving cloud control, and DLP and DLP Cloud Apps. And what they do is they help you define the life cycle of data in your business, and you can control it in the cloud. Okay, so there are two kinds of deployment to control the cloud. Number one is API. And this gives you visibility and control over the data and the behavior of the users, but it's only for sanctioned cloud applications. Office 365 is very popular. So for example, if you want to use Office 365, and if you want to use AIP, Microsoft AIP, to protect your data, we can look at Office 365 OneDrive with an API, and we can say, look, somebody has categorized this sensitive data as not sensitive. We are going to decrypt it, and we are going to change the tag to highly confidential, and then we're going to re-encrypt it. So we have deep integration with, for example, Microsoft Office 365. And there's nothing in the way. The user does not know this is happening unless we decide to tell them. There's nothing in the line. The DLP, the CASB connects to your cloud application via out-of-band API. And I can show you the architecture in a second. We're really looking at the log files. We can only take action on things that Microsoft give us, or Office, or Salesforce, or Dropbox, or Box, or Workday give us. The other way is inline, and this could be forward proxy or reverse proxy. So typically from a managed device or from your office location, this would be forward proxy. For an unmanaged device, this would be reverse proxy. And it's inline, so we can decrypt data as it's going inline, and we can apply DLP policies based upon Forcepoint DLP. So you can define data once across your entire enterprise, and we can inspect the data as it's leaving your business and look at the behavior of the users. So if you have Forcepoint's web proxy, there is seamless integration for transparent proxying from the gateway. If you have a third-party proxy, then we would use an agent to do this. Or, of course, reverse proxy, we would integrate with identity to do this. So the beautiful thing with inline is we do not need the cloud vendor to provide an API. We can detect traffic in any cloud application, anything at all. So the mode for an API would be the user connects to, for example, Office 365, then Office, for example, emails somebody or creates a document. And then what happens is the API between the Forcepoint DLP, the Forcepoint platform, would say this user has done something, and then we can apply a policy and we can change it if the user has broken the policy. But it will always be afterwards. The beautiful thing is we can look back in time. So we can, if you have deployed Office 365 and you want to get control, for example, over access to sensitive documents from outside of your business, we can clean it up backwards. It's very, very easy to do that. The other deployment mode is forward proxy. Well, it's proxy, but we're going to show you forward proxy. So our cloud-based gateway, which can be located in Azure or AWS, there's no cost for this. The forward proxy gateway or the reverse proxy gateway. So a user connects to a cloud application via a next generation firewall. It could be Forcepoint next generation firewall, or it could be Forcepoint web security, or it could be Palo Alto checkpoint. We don't care. The architecture is the same. The user tries to connect to a cloud application, and before they go to the cloud application, they go to Forcepoint. So we do not intercept traffic for everything, only cloud applications that you want to protect. So typically this would be Office Suite or Salesforce, and then we can apply a policy, and we have a catalog of standard policies that you can deploy or modify, or Filtermax can work with you to deliver against your risk, to lower your risk. It's very, very simple. So we intercept the traffic before it goes to the cloud application, and then we apply our controls. And of course, you know, with Forcepoint, we have seamless transparent proxying, and we have endpoint agents for devices that do not have a Forcepoint behind a Forcepoint gateway, or using Forcepoint web security. We can put an agent. It's just one agent. And then for reverse proxy, we can use a vanity URL. So instead of going to the cloud application from an unmanaged device, you go to a reverse proxy. Okay. So what is DLP Cloud Applications? Well, what DLP Cloud Applications, I always like to use the word data lifecycle protection, because typically the industry makes you know, bad negative words like data loss prevention. But really, we know that you need to use that data. The problem isn't losing it. The bigger problem is not being able to use it. That's why people traditionally with DLP do not block very much. They only block the obvious problems. What we want to do is allow you to use data everywhere. So we want to give you a single view of your data. If you're inside Forcepoint DLP environment, you don't have to go to another console. You don't have to use different DLP in the cloud to DLP on-premise. We want you to be able to create DLP rules within Forcepoint Security Manager, FSM. And when there are problems, we want to keep the samples and the events on-premise. Because the problem with cloud-based DLP is you can never store samples. Because what if it's a credit card number or personal data? You know, do you have appropriate certification for that cloud vendor? No. So have one place to look at your data and extend that control wherever it might go. So you can have, you know, Office 365 has basic DLP, but the problem if you have DLP on premise and you have DLP in the cloud, then you have separate islands of data. And then how do you manage the process of an incident, resolving an incident? So we want to have a single version of the truth, so you can quickly respond to problems and you can learn, and then eventually you can block. And we want to be able to do this for any cloud applications, not just Office 365, anything at all. Something that's local to Hungary or something that's globally available. We want to be able to protect anything, and that's what we can do. So this is the data, Forcepoint data protection portfolio. Quickly, very quickly. Within our license, you have DLP Discover. So this is trying to find data, which is a very good first place. Then we want to look at data in the network, wherever that data might go, by email, instant messenger, into the web. We can intercept data in the web traffic. We want to look at the endpoints. And with example of Office 365, endpoint DLP is more important now. Because if a user tries to email data that's sensitive and they are blocked because it's not possible, what will they do? They'll try to upload it to OneDrive and share from OneDrive, because that's what the company gives them, right? So if you're not looking at the data in OneDrive and the data on the endpoint, then you're going to have be allowing people to break the rules. Then DLP in the cloud. So going deep inside a cloud application and monitoring what people are doing with that data. Are they sharing it? Are they stealing it? Are they making mistakes? So we have two additional technologies. One is dynamic data protection. It's quite complicated and it's useful for highly high security customers. But we're going to be launching our dynamic data protection as a service in September, which will make it very much easier for you to deploy. Then CASB, which is looking at continuous adaptive risk protection around the user behavior. Okay, so just quickly, your data lifecycle protection journey, it's always a good place to start with monitoring data. Monitor it on endpoint, monitoring it on your network, monitoring it in your cloud application. And then we start to modify the user's behavior so that they are starting to behave in a way that is more appropriate for the business. And then once you have told them what is the appropriate behavior, you can start to block them if they start to break the rules. Forcepoint's product suite is DLP suite, which you can then buy DLP Cloud Apps, and then you can buy CASB. But if you choose to look at the risk adaptive data protection, we have DDP, and then behavior analytics. This is a lot of products in a page. It's not the reason why we're here today, but I just wanted to show you the options. And of course, we have suites that could include many of these together. Forcepoint Advantage, for example. Our job at Forcepoint is to try and make things accessible, trying to make it easy for you, not to try and give you more products and make it more complicated. So, what was DLP Cloud Applications? So we launched DLP Cloud Applications 2 years ago. What it enabled us to do is to extend your inspection of sensitive data into cloud applications that you choose to use, but with an API. So you could define data once, define the process around data, if it's on the endpoint, if it's being printed, if it's on the network, or if it's in the cloud, so that we can apply compliance rules, which are standard out-of-the-box compliance rules. We actually have 275 data definitions within Forcepoint DLP and over 1,100 standard policies that you can use. Our job is to make it easy. And then what we could do is we could use the reverse proxy technology to protect the corporate devices. But we have improved our technology, and we've launched 8.71, and we are launching 8.72. And this gives you real-time protection against any cloud application at all. So you can define what is sensitive data. If a user decides they want to use G Suite because they're working with a partner that needs to use G Suite, you can intercept the traffic for any cloud application. I use the example of G Suite, but it could be just as easily Slack or Zoom or Teams or anything. So I wanted to talk with you about the architecture for cloud applications and CASB. So typically, I'm just going to build this one out. So typically you have a customer environment on the left where you protect it, and you have Forcepoint Security Manager or Triton Manager, which is the traditional name. And then on the right, you have the internet. Inside the internet, you have where the data could be in Office 365 or G Suite or Salesforce. And then you have devices. So the suite that we offer has traditional DLP controls to data at rest, data in motion, and data in use. And traditionally, inside your business, we would have one single place where we define sensitive data and the process inside your perimeter. DLP Cloud Applications gives you an API connection through Forcepoint into a cloud application. So you define data at one time, and then you control it in many places. So it gives you a consistent DLP policy so that you can provide data anywhere. But we're going further. We can now provide real-time data blocking of data uploads and downloads from sanctioned applications through any user who wants to use the proxy capability. They have this blocking capability. But we cannot do this alone. We have a very wide partner ecosystem. And I'm going to talk a little bit about two, Microsoft and Bolden James. I'll tell you exactly what we can do with Microsoft and Bolden James. So they are around data classification, labeling. So the data classification is very complementary to DLP. If you're not aware, data classification allows you to define what is not confidential, confidential, top secret within your business. What kinds of data are publicly available, so they're not confidential, or what kind of data is confidential, only available to internal employees, or maybe high security, highly confidential, only available to executives or HR or finance. So both products, Microsoft and Bolden James, are very, very good at this. The only real difference is that Microsoft AIP is focused on Office 365, and Bolden James is for any platform. Now, Forcepoint can sell Bolden James along with FilterMax, but we also work very closely with Microsoft, and I want to show you what we do. So AIP enables the employees to say, I think this document that I'm writing on Word is top secret or not confidential. What we can do is Forcepoint can look at the where the data is within Office 365, and we can say, actually, that user has made a mistake. That user is calling it top secret, but actually it's really just confidential. What's more common is the user will say it's not confidential, and actually it is very confidential. So Forcepoint's DLP Cloud Apps can import the definition from Microsoft AIP of what is confidential. We can use a DLP scan against the data, even if it's encrypted with AIP. We can open it up, look at it, and then we can change the tag. So we can correct the mistake that the user made. So I just wanted to share that with you because that's pretty cool. With Bolden James, it's slightly different. So we have Forcepoint DLP, which will we can import the configuration from Bolden James. You can say, for example, non-business, general business, or confidential, and then we can define a guidance for the user. So if a user has created a document and DLP says it's not correct labeling, then we can take the user through a user education process and also change the tag. But we can import the definition of the definitions and labels into the DLP. So it's very cool. This is just a proposed implementation. We typically suggest classifying the data first, you know, trying to decide what is sensitive to you, looking at the data as it's on the endpoint, and then start to focus on the cloud, because it's a little bit easier to look at endpoints because you have more control over them. Anyway, I just want to share with you this because it's showing you how Forcepoint and FilterMax, we're not just trying to sell you a product, we understand best practice. So at this point, I'd like to ask Miroslav, if you have not fallen asleep with my voice.
Not yet. It was difficult to do.
Thank you. I'm not sure, Daniel, how can Miroslav, oh, I will stop showing screen.
Thank you very much for the presentation, David. I'm sorry. So let me allow Mirek to do a little demonstration.
Sorry.
So Mirek, the stage is yours. I suppose you can start sharing your screen now. Thank you, David.
Yes, I hope I'm showing the screen. You should see nothing now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a black. And I'm gonna roll the video. I hope that this will be fine. I don't know, Daniel, if you have the backup of the copy in case it will not be working as expected.
So yes, we do. I mean, just hang on a quick second. I will change the presenter to myself, and then I can share the video if it's fine for you. So Forcepoint DLP Cloud Apps Inline, that's the video that I have. Is that correct, Mirek?
That should be the one, yes. Meanwhile,
okay.
I even find the correct camera. Okay.
Okay, so can I launch it, Mirek?
Yes, you can.
Okay, it's a 5-minute video.
That's the 5-minute video, exactly. So we should wait until.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Skurlik. I'm Senior Sales Engineer with Forcepoint. I'd like to show in this video a little bit more about our integration with Azure Information Protection. I have a policy here that I have Azure Information Protection metadata label. I already had imported the data label schema from Microsoft, and I create a policy that if any file matches the confidential label that I have for Azure Information Protection, you will take a remediation action. In this case, my remediation action is block all. In this demonstration, we'll show more about the DLP Cloud proxy that I'm blocking, uploading, and attaching, or downloading downloading files for the DLP Cloud proxy channel. Also, we can apply the same policy for all other destinations, but in this case, I'm only looking for DLP Cloud proxy. So if I go forward here in the next tab, I have the destination tab that I can apply policy for all DLP channels that I manage. But in this case, I will be only demonstrating DLP Cloud service and DLP Cloud proxy. So in this case, I'm applying this policy only for blocks. So let's say in this use case, I will show a user downloading a file from Microsoft Office 365, and that file has a confidential metadata label. And then the user is trying to upload that same file to a box account, to an unsanctioned box account. So let me go to the client, the endpoint client over here, and show a little bit more than practice. So I have a file called price list. I would download the file. I would not get blocked to download the file because Office 365 is my managed cloud application. And I go in the folder over here and show the classification. So if I right click in the file, and it has the option classify and protect. So that option means I have Azure Information Protection Client. And I can see the classification of the file, confirmation. This is confirmation. I could change the classification. I could change the permission as well. I would not change anything else. And then I will go to my Box account. I allow the user to access Box account. This is a personal Box account, but I will try to upload this file, which contains the confidential metadata label. So let me try to upload this file under downloads. So when I'm trying to upload, the file has been analyzed by our DLP Cloud proxy. So that would work for managed endpoints as well as for unmanaged endpoints that we control. For a managed endpoint, we will be able to control only the OneDrive because that's a managed application. For Box, as it is an unsanctioned application, you would require an agent for that. But we will be able to create a policy if it is a managed device. We don't let the user to download the file that has confidential metadata label. So you can prevent confidential files to be downloaded to a managed device or PIOD device that you cannot control with an agent. So going back in the UI over here, showing a little bit more about our cloud data protection. If I go to Audit Log, I can see all the activities that happen for that specific specific activities, the user activity, and I can see also the upload to being blocked by our data protection policy. I can see that file was downloaded or was viewed and downloaded from Office 365. So I see Office 365 over here, and I try to upload in 1111 test folder price list to 2019 file.x file. So if I go in the Forcepoint Security Manager, which I have all the DLP data protection activities and instance, I can see also that information. So I can see previously I tried to upload a file that has confidential metadata label, and I can see more information as well. So in this video, just to summarize, I show a little bit more the Forcepoint DLP integration with AIP solution and our DLP Cloud Proxy solution. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, so thank you, Daniel. I was expecting you will run it without the voice, but I think my colleague did.
I'm sorry about that. I wasn't aware.
It's not deal. I would just saying the same, more or less.
Save you a little bit of work, maybe.
Yeah, save my voice.
Let me make you present your
basically. All right, I will not be presenting anything else at the moment. I will let Dave to just finish the presentation. I just wanted to point out that in the last video, what we saw was that the rule that you actually create and you have prepared in your DLP is the very same. You don't have to change the rules. You can do just a little tweaks, and you can immediately start monitoring the same data that you're monitoring on-premise also in the cloud. So it really saves a lot of investments that you already did in your DLP, where you typically start with on-premise DLP, and you basically are using all this work that you did before and just extend the protection into the cloud very, very simply. So I will just ask Dave to finish the new things in the CASB in the next few minutes. And thank you.
Okay, David, I just made you presenter again. We have a few minutes until 3 o'clock. If you need a little bit more time, it's okay. Just please keep that in mind. Maybe we have some questions, none so far, but maybe people are waiting with their questions until the end.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Mirek, and thank you, Dana. So you guys can see my screen, right? What's hot in CASB?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So thank you very much indeed. And I'm sorry, you can, to the audience, you can see this is live. You know, we're doing this because we really do care about you guys. We did not want to record this ahead of time. We want to show you live. So, you know, sometimes we have technical difficulties. I wanted to show you what's new, what is cutting edge in CASB, finally to finish. So I'd like to introduce to you business impact analysis. And I am very sorry for so many words on one slide. What we have introduced in our product is not something you have to buy extra. It's included in the CASB. Is we have analyzed many cloud applications against confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We've analyzed the actions of the users. So if a user does something, for example, in Salesforce that is risky, we want, I mean, there are hundreds of things they could do. We have categorized all of the things they can do in these four categories. So for example, if an AWS administrator resets a firewall, that could be high importance against, I don't know, availability. If a Salesforce user logs on, that would be low importance against the availability. If, for example, a Salesforce, a salesperson in your organization downloads a lot of records in a Salesforce report, that could be critical for confidentiality. So for hundreds and hundreds, in some case thousands of actions inside all of these cloud applications, we've analyzed confidentiality, integrity, and availability risk of the users. So how can you do this? What we want to give you is one policy. If any user, for example, in this case, accessing, for example, Salesforce, does anything that is high impact, remember 81 to 100 is the highest criticality, right? Sensitive actions, for example, sensitive administrative actions. Yeah, if any user does anything that is in this category, you can make one policy to say, we're going to block it, or we're going to notify the administrator. Look at the next level. So the next level is high. So high impact activities. So things that do not normally require administrator privileges, but high impact. So we could say, you could make a policy for Salesforce, for example, same example. You could say, if a user does something that's high impact and they are not at their typical location and they're not from their typical endpoint, block it. So in this case, the action could be downloading large amounts of sensitive data, block that. Or the action could be, I don't know, making a configuration change for a Salesforce administrator if you are not in your typical location. It makes it incredibly simple for you to make a very simple policy to monitor the activities of your users and administrators within some of the biggest cloud applications in the world. And the good news is we can do this for any cloud application. This is inline capability. So if you have a cloud application that's very, very important to you and you'd like us to look at controlling it, then in the same way, then we can always work with you on that. So I just wanted to finish off with that because that is really cutting edge. No other technology has this capability right now. So just to say thank you very much from Miroslav and I, and also to Daniel and the team. And if you have any questions or follow-up, please just ask.